It was a beautiful afternoon, one of those rare moments when everything felt perfect. The smell of home-cooked meals filled the dining room as we gathered together, Zach, Stephanie, and me. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them, my son and his wife, sharing stories, laughter, and little glances. It was one of those moments when I realized just how proud I was of what I had built, a successful business and, more importantly, a loving family. But beneath that pride, I couldn't shake the worry that lingered just below the surface. "How are you feeling, Stephanie?" I asked, genuinely concerned. I could see the signs of pregnancy on her, and while she smiled, I knew there was more to it. "Are you taking good care of yourself and the baby?" Stephanie smiled back at me, her hand resting on Zach's as she spoke. "I'm feeling good, thank you. Aiden's been calm so far." Her voice was warm, her hand gently stroking her growing belly, and I could sense her excitement mixed with a bit of nervousness. "And with Zach and you always close by, I feel even more at ease." Zach, always so thoughtful, chimed in with that reassuring smile of his. "We're doing everything we can, Mom. And Stephanie is amazing. I know you can see it. Aiden is going to grow up surrounded by love." Hearing those words made me smile, a deep sense of fulfillment washing over me. "That's what I've always wanted," I said softly, thinking back on all the years that had brought us here. "After your father passed, I dedicated myself to two things, our company and you. And now, seeing our family grow, I feel a richness that no amount of money could ever buy." Zach nodded, squeezing my hand with gratitude. "You've taught us so much, Mom. The value of family, patience, and love. We'll pass those same values on to Aiden. Who knows? One day, he might be sitting here, telling us stories, just like we are now." Stephanie, clearly touched, added with a slight catch in her voice. "And, considering my own father's position, I never imagined finding so much love here. You have no idea how much it means to me. Aiden is so lucky to be part of this family." Our conversation naturally drifted towards the future. We talked about the excitement of Aiden's arrival, how life would change in ways we couldn't yet imagine. I shared stories of when Zach was a boy, drawing both laughter and nostalgic sighs. We made plans, trips we wanted to take together, teaching Aiden to ride a bike, his first day at school, all the adventures waiting for us as a family. But, even as we laughed and dreamed, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the tension from outside our little bubble. My company and Stephanie's father's company were fierce rivals. I knew family always came first, no matter the differences. Still, I couldn't stop wondering how that rivalry might affect us, especially with Aiden's arrival. The thought gnawed at me, but I kept it to myself, choosing instead to focus on the joy of the moment. After lunch, as I cleared the dishes with Zach and Stephanie, my mind was racing, filled with 1,000 different thoughts. No matter how hard I tried to stay calm, Kevin's actions were always there, gnawing at my peace. He was known for his arrogance and his relentless hunger for power. In the business world, he was a fierce adversary. I could still recall the countless times he had offered me absurd amounts of money to buy my company, each time rejecting him without a second thought. To me, this company wasn't just a business, it was my family's legacy. I would never let it go. One tense meeting in particular stood out in my mind. Kevin had made no secret of his disdain for Zach and Stephanie's marriage. He'd said something like, "Do you really think this union will bring anything good? Our families, Holly, we're like oil and water. We'll never mix." His smirk. I could still see it, cold and dismissive. But I always believed that the love Zach and Stephanie shared was stronger than any business rivalry. That's why I knew I had to confront Kevin head-on. I asked him, "Why do you keep trying to tear them apart, Kevin?" This has nothing to do with business, and all you're doing is causing pain and division in our family." My voice had been firm, but inside, I was aching. Kevin, of course, just doubled down on his arrogance. He told me something like, "Holly, there's no room for sentiment in the business world. It's kill or be killed. And I intend to come out on top. Until my daughter inherits your company, I'll continue to see both you and this marriage as a threat to my empire." That conversation had shaken me, but it also made me more determined than ever to protect my family and our legacy. I knew Kevin wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted, but I was ready for any challenge he threw my way. I remember saying to him, "This is just your pride, Kevin. You want my company as a trophy, nothing more. There's no other reason for your hatred towards me or this beautiful marriage." I was determined to end that argument once and for all. Zach and Stephanie were just as worried as I was about the situation. Zach, bless him, was torn between his love for Stephanie and his anger at seeing our families pulled into this cycle of conflict. Stephanie, she was caught between loyalty to the family she was born into and the love she had for her new one. She mourned the way her father acted. I could see that in her eyes. But despite all the challenges, our family remained united, held together by our belief that love and integrity would prevail over greed and rivalry. As I put away the last of the dishes, I couldn't help but watch Zach and Stephanie. There they were, standing together, deeply in love, strong despite everything. I thought back to the harsh words I'd exchanged with Kevin, and how, despite everything, he had begrudgingly recognized their strength and courage. If only we could overcome this rivalry, I thought to myself, imagine the wonderful days that could lie ahead. A sigh escaped my lips. Suddenly, a soft but urgent voice interrupted my thoughts. It was Stephanie. She looked at me, a mix of surprise and slight panic on her face. "Zach," she said, her voice trembling, "I think it's time. I can feel it. My water just broke." I placed my hand on my stomach, the weight of the moment sinking in. I turned quickly, my heart racing with worry. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Is the baby all right?" I asked, stepping closer. Stephanie, trying her best to stay calm, said, "My water broke. The baby is coming. Aiden is coming." Zach jumped up, his face a mix of panic and excitement. "Mom, what do I do? Should I call the hospital? Has anyone seen my phone?" His voice trembled with both fear and joy, that kind of emotional storm only a birth could stir up. But I knew I had to take charge. Years of experience and instinct kicked in. "Don't worry. I know exactly what to do," I said firmly. "Zach, grab Stephanie's bag and help her to the car. I'll call the hospital and let them know we're on our way." My voice was steady, even as the air was thick with tension and anticipation. In that sudden whirlwind, I became their anchor. As Zach helped Stephanie to the car, I quickly called the hospital. I knew Dr. Steven, the head of the hospital and an old family friend, would have everything ready by the time we arrived. "Steven, we're on our way. Make sure everything is prepared for Aiden's arrival," I said, my voice filled with urgency and gratitude. The drive to the hospital was short, but it felt like an eternity. Stephanie focused on her breathing, trying to stay calm. Zach held her hand tightly, whispering words of encouragement. And I, sitting in the driver's seat, silently prayed for the safety and health of both Stephanie and the baby. When we arrived, Dr. Steven and his team were ready, swiftly guiding us to the delivery room. The wait was agonizing for Zach and me. We paced the hallway, waiting for any news. As I stood there, I couldn't help but think about the irony of life. How such a joyful event, the birth of a new family member, could come during a time of so much worry and tension. I looked over at Zach. I saw the brave and decisive man I always knew him to be, but now, about to become a father, I could feel the weight of his nerves pressing down on him. I approached him, trying to offer some comfort. Zach, my son, you are going to be an incredible father. I have no doubt about that, I told him, my voice soft but full of conviction. And Dr. Steven is here. He's one of the best doctors. Everything is going to be just fine. You'll see. Zach looked at me, finding some solace in my words. Thanks, Mom. I just want what's best for Stephanie and Aiden. I'm ready to do anything to protect and take care of them, he replied, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. After a brief pause, I suggested something that I knew needed to be said. Zach, I think you should call your stepdad, Kevin. He's Aiden's grandfather after all. He deserves to know and be here. Zach hesitated. I could see the discomfort in his eyes. The strained relationship with Kevin was a delicate matter. But deep down, he knew I was right. With a sigh of resignation, he agreed. You're right, Mom. No matter what, he's still Stephanie's father. I'll call him. With hands that were barely steady, Zach picked up the phone and dialed Kevin's number. It rang a few times before a cold, distant voice answered. What do you want, Zach? Kevin's sharp question cut through the air. Hey, Kevin. It's about Stephanie. She's in labor. We're at the hospital now, and they've just taken her in with the medical team, Zach explained, trying to keep his voice calm. I thought you should know. It'd be good if you could come. There was a heavy silence on the other end. Zach could almost feel Kevin's guarded excitement through the phone. Finally, Kevin responded. His voice still held that familiar tone of disdain. I suppose I can't ignore the birth of my grandson. I'll be there. But don't think this changes anything between us, he said, before abruptly hanging up. Zach stood still for a moment, holding the phone to his ear, processing the conversation. He turned to me with a half smile, his eyes a mix of relief and concern. He's coming. He's already on his way. Didn't sound too thrilled about it, though, he said simply. Holly nodded, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. No matter how he feels, Zach, family should stick together during times like these, I responded. I held tightly to my words, even knowing the challenges Kevin's presence might bring. Zach let out a deep sigh, acknowledging my mother's wisdom. You always knew how to stay calm and keep a positive outlook, even when everything around seemed to crumble, Mom, he said, a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. I hope I can do the same, especially now that I'm about to become a father. I smiled gently, directing my warm gaze toward my son. You're already doing it, Zach. Your strength and love for Stephanie and Aiden show that. Remember, the strength of a family doesn't come from the absence of conflict, but from our ability to face each struggle together. Zach nodded, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly from my comforting words. That's right, Mom. In the end, their happiness is what matters. Whatever it takes to protect Stephanie and Aiden, we'll make it happen. That's right, I agreed, giving his shoulder a gentle squeeze. And who knows? Aiden's arrival might even bring some change to your gruff stepfather. The birth of a child has a way of touching hearts and reminding people of what truly matters. But we hardly had time to comfort each other. Moments later, the operating room door swung open, and one of the doctors appeared, calling Zach's name. Mr. Zach, you're ready to accompany your wife through delivery. Please follow us. His voice was calm and professional, yet it sounded like a summons to a new chapter in Zach's life. Nodding, he followed the doctor and quickly donned the sterile gown provided. With worry and excitement for Stephanie and the baby, my heart pounded hard in my chest. I was left alone in the hallway, quietly praying for Stephanie and Aiden's safety, my hands clasped together. The stillness of the hallway contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I tried to cling to the belief that everything would be okay, yet the worry of being a mother and a grandmother tormented me. In this painful moment of reflection, Kevin arrived. His presence was immediately felt. "So, what's happening? Has my daughter given birth yet, or are we still playing doctor and patient here?" His voice carried urgency, laced with disdain that revealed his typical cold and arrogant way of dealing with situations. I maintained my composure despite Kevin's direct attack. I told him how relieved I was that he had come. "Stephanie started having contractions a little while ago. Zach is with her now, supporting her. We're all waiting and praying for everything to go smoothly." My voice remained calm and measured, a clear contrast to Kevin's irritation. He didn't seem satisfied with just the information. He was looking to provoke me, wanting a reaction that would justify our endless quarrels. I hope Zach isn't the kind of guy who faints during childbirth. But given who his father is, my expectations aren't high. His tone was sharp, each word designed to wound. I felt a wave of irritation wash over me, but I knew that responding aggressively would only fuel Kevin's combative nature. "Kevin, this isn't the time to focus on our differences. What matters now are Stephanie and the baby. Let's concentrate on them, please," I replied. The tension between us lingered, greater than any personal disputes or business disagreements. As we waited for news, a heavy silence settled between us. Finally, when the doctors appeared, we temporarily set our differences aside. "Stephanie required a C-section, but I can assure you that she and the baby are safe," the doctor announced. His voice brought an immediate sense of relief. "She'll be with us for a few days for recovery and observation, but the results are very good." I felt the heavy burden of worry lift, replaced by waves of gratitude and relief. "Thank you, doctor. When can I see her and the baby?" I asked, filled with the urge to meet our new family member and confirm that Stephanie was truly okay. "You can go in now, but please keep it brief. Rest is essential for recovery," the doctor replied, guiding us to the room where Stephanie and Aiden were. As I entered the room, I was moved to see Stephanie lying in bed. She was clearly exhausted, yet radiating a happiness that words couldn't express, cradling Aiden in her arms. Zach stood beside the bed, his face glowing with a mix of pride and joy. He gazed at our newborn son with unconditional love and admiration. "What a beautiful baby. He has inherited the beauty of his parents." "Absolutely precious," I murmured, moving closer to see the baby. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at little Aiden. A deep feeling of gratitude and love enveloped my heart. Stephanie smiled at me. "Thank you, Holly. And thank you for rushing me to the hospital." Meanwhile, Kevin stood at a distance, watching with an inscrutable expression. But in that moment of blessing and relief, everyone's attention was focused on Stephanie and Aiden. I noticed Kevin's coldness, yet I chose to focus on the happiness of that moment. Even if it was a brief instance, it united our family in the miracle of life. I pushed aside the differences and disputes. I knew the time to confront the complexities of our relationships would come later. But for now, it was a moment filled with gratitude and love, symbolized by the arrival of Aiden, a new beginning. Still, even in the midst of joy, other worries needed consideration. We had to organize a schedule to ensure Stephanie would never be alone. The decision to take turns accompanying her during her hospital stay was taken seriously by everyone. Despite the tension between Kevin and me, the established routine meant someone was always close to Stephanie while still allowing each of us to maintain our daily lives. We agreed that Kevin would handle the morning shift, I would take the afternoon, and Zach would take the night.
The next day, after a night filled with whispered conversations and watchful eyes between Zach and Stephanie, the sun rose, bringing with it Kevin's arrival at the hospital. He stepped in with a sense of responsibility, ready to take on his role. Though there was an emotional distance between him and Stephanie as they interacted, his presence still served as a source of comfort for his daughter.
When my turn came, I walked into the hospital with the usual determination and compassion I held deep inside. In the hallway, I ran into Kevin as he stepped out of Stephanie's room. He flashed that arrogant smile and said, "Well, Holly, I hope you take better care of the patient than your business." His voice dripped with provocation. I felt the stirrings of irritation but didn't let it show. I merely nodded, allowing him to continue on his way without engaging. Once inside the room, I immediately noticed the tension etched on Stephanie's face. The young mother looked scared, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for something, or someone. "Stephanie, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I asked, moving closer to her bed, worry flooding my heart. She hesitated, biting her lower lip. It was clear she was wrestling with whether or not to share what was troubling her. "I'm fine, Holly. I just think I'm a little tired," she finally replied, her voice weak and strained as she tried to mask her anxiety. But I wasn't convinced. I knew Stephanie too well, I could always sense when something was off. And Kevin's unsettling presence only amplified my suspicions. I sat beside her bed, taking her hand gently, offering quiet comfort. "Stephanie, you can tell me anything. Whatever it is, we're here to help you and Aiden," I said softly, encouraging her to open up. Despite my efforts, Stephanie remained reticent, reluctant to discuss what had happened during Kevin's visit. I respected her decision, choosing not to push further, but my heart was heavy with worry. What could Kevin have said or done to rattle her so? Determined to protect my family, I knew I had to tread carefully with this issue. Perhaps I should talk with Zach about the best way to deal with Kevin moving forward. In the meantime, I focused on providing Stephanie with all the support and love I could, ensuring she and Aiden felt safe, at least for now. The next day, my routine resumed, marked by a commitment to my family. As I made my way to the hospital, I knew I couldn't avoid running into Kevin. Just as I had anticipated, he seized the opportunity to provoke me, tossing a sharp comment my way. "Back for another day as a surrogate mother? Just don't smother your daughter with too much worry," he sneered. I chose to maintain my dignity, ignoring him as I focused on my mission of supporting Stephanie. When I entered the room, a wave of déjà vu washed over me. Once again, Stephanie appeared frightened, her usually bright demeanor clouded with worry. The situation mirrored the day before, heightening my anxiety. "Stephanie, please, talk to me. What's bothering you?" "It's more than just fatigue, I can tell. This is about Kevin, isn't it? What did he do?" I pressed, my concern swelling. But Stephanie remained silent, avoiding my gaze. "I really don't want to talk about it, Holly. Please don't push me," she replied, turning her eyes away. Her hesitation and nervousness only heightened my concern. I felt a strong conviction that something serious had occurred during Kevin's visit. Realizing that pushing Stephanie for answers wasn't getting us anywhere, it dawned on me that it was time to involve Zach in this situation. As night fell and Zach arrived for his shift, I spotted him in the hallway. His face bore a serious expression, mirroring the gravity of my thoughts. "Zach, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Stephanie and Kevin." "Something strange is going on," I began, my voice low but laced with urgency. Zach picked up on my serious tone and nodded, showing he was ready to listen. I laid out every detail without holding back, recounting my encounter with Kevin and Stephanie's obviously shaken response. I'm really worried, Zach. Stephanie doesn't want to talk about what happened, but it's clear that her father's visit has affected her negatively. Do you think I should confront Kevin about this? I asked, seeking his perspective. Zach listened intently, his expression growing more serious as I spoke. The thought that Kevin might be causing Stephanie discomfort filled him with a mix of anger and protectiveness, especially during such a vulnerable time. Mom, I don't know what Kevin is planning, but we can't let this continue. Let me talk to him in the morning, he responded, his voice firm with determination.
The tension within the family rose once again the following morning. Zach was resolute, it was time to intervene. His worry for his wife and newborn son outweighed his fear of confronting his father-in-law. At the end of his shift, he waited in the hallway with a determined stride. His heart raced at the anticipation of their confrontation. When Kevin arrived, sporting his usual arrogant demeanor, Zach wasted no time. What are you doing? Why are you scaring Stephanie so much? She can barely talk about your visit, he demanded. His voice was firm, his gaze locked onto his father-in-law's eyes. Kevin responded with a smug smile that clearly dismissed Zach's concern. Zach, do you really think I'm responsible for your wife's condition? She's probably just tired, he deflected smoothly. That indifferent response and the contempt in his tone only fueled Zach's anger further. Don't be ridiculous, Kevin. If anything happens to Stephanie or Aiden, I'll throw you out. Do you understand? He shot back. His voice rose, laced with a clear warning. That threatening tone did not go unnoticed. Instead of shrinking back, Kevin glared at Zach with intense eyes. Are you threatening me, kid? Do you really think you have the strength to confront me? You shouldn't be so sure of your position, he taunted. The disdain dripped from every word. The provocation was clear, and anyone watching could sense the heat of an imminent explosion. The argument escalated quickly, their voices echoing down the hospital corridor. Patients and staff began to take notice, some stopping to observe the unusual scene. This is unacceptable, Kevin. This is a hospital, not a boxing ring. You should be ashamed for disturbing the peace of your daughter and grandson, Zach shouted. His outrage was palpable. Kevin, on the other hand, seemed sensitive to the criticism. His anger and frustration were entirely directed at Zach. Don't lecture me about shame. You and your mother are the real problem here. My daughter would be happier without your influence, he shot back. Each word was a blow to Zach's efforts to maintain his composure. Just when the situation seemed on the brink of physical confrontation, a nurse approached. Her expression was serious. Gentlemen, this is a hospital. Please lower your voices and resolve your conflict elsewhere, she intervened. Her authority brought a moment of clarity to both men. Zach recognized just how far things had escalated. He took a deep breath, trying to regain control of his emotions. He knew continuing the argument wouldn't help Stephanie and Aiden. After casting one last harsh glance at Kevin, he turned and walked away. Determined to protect his wife and son, he felt ready to pay any price. His devotion and love for his family only strengthened his resolve, while Kevin seemed utterly unfazed by the warning.
As I arrived at the hospital for the third day in a row, my heart sank at the thought of facing him again. Kevin's presence loomed over me like a dark cloud. I spotted my daughter-in-law, Stephanie, and saw the anxiety etched across her face. It was unbearable to witness her fear. I couldn't quite put my finger on what had shaken her so deeply during Kevin's visit, but it was clear that a new day had brought me no closer to answers. With each passing moment, my determination to protect my family solidified. Thoughts of Stephanie and Aiden's safety consumed me, pushing me toward extreme measures I had never considered before. After my shift ended, I met with Zach. I felt an urgency that had become all too familiar. "Zach, we have to act now," I urged, my voice trembling with both anxiety and conviction. "We can't leave Stephanie in this state. She's so vulnerable right now, and she needs our support more than ever." I was aware of the weight of my words. He had witnessed the confrontation with Kevin that morning, and I knew the seriousness of our situation weighed heavily on him. "I have a plan, but I need your help and Dr. Stevens' approval," I continued, desperation creeping into my tone. Zach listened carefully, his face reflecting the turmoil of the morning. As I explained my idea to install hidden cameras in the room, I could see the apprehension in his eyes. "Cameras? Mom, that's way too dangerous. What if they find them? What about Stephanie's privacy?" His hesitance echoed my own inner conflict, the ethical implications heavy on my heart. "I know, son," I replied, my voice softening. "I'm grappling with the same thoughts. But this is about protecting Stephanie and Aiden. I plan to ask Dr. Steven for permission. I want to make sure everything stays within legal boundaries. We need to know what's happening, and this might be the only way to clarify the issues at hand." I hope to ease his fears while stressing the necessity of action. Faced with my heartfelt reasoning and genuine concern, Zach ultimately agreed, though I could still sense his reservations. "Okay, Mom. I'll set them up. But I can't stand seeing Stephanie so frightened and anxious. And Aiden needs us too." His words came from a place of love and determination, reflecting his desire to protect our family. After all, in moments like these, we had to be brave and face the storms together.
The next morning, before his shift ended, Zach secured Dr. Stevens' permission to install hidden cameras in Stephanie's room while she slept. He made sure they were well hidden and positioned where they had a clear view. The hurried task filled him with a mix of anxiety and hope. The anxiety came from the fear of what they might discover, while hope bloomed at the possibility of finally finding clues to protect Stephanie from the dangers Kevin might be causing.
I felt a fleeting sense of relief when Zach told me he had set up the camera. But then, a new wave of anxiety crashed over me as I wondered what that camera would reveal. We both understood that we were crossing a delicate line, but the need to take action outweighed our doubts. All that was left for us was to wait. I watched and hoped our actions would lead to a proper resolution. The plan would be set in motion soon. Standing alone in the hallway, I was enveloped in a mix of tension and worry as I awaited word from Zach. The corridor, usually bustling with people, felt eerily quiet, making the weight of this moment all the more pronounced. My heart raced, and the uncertainty of the truth I was about to uncover swirled in my mind. Then Zach appeared. His face was tight with tension, and I knew Kevin had already entered Stephanie's hospital room. I quickly pulled out my phone and opened the app to access the hidden camera feed. My son and I held our breath as the screen displayed the interior of the room. The first words spoken by Kevin were chilling enough to freeze our hearts. "Now, Stephanie, have you really thought about what we discussed? This is for both of us." Stephanie's anxiety was palpable, her voice trembling as she replied, "Dad, I can't do it. I can't just leave Zach and Holly without saying anything and go with you." Her voice was filled with anguish, each word laced with pain and inner turmoil. Kevin couldn't hide his irritation any longer, his frustration growing with her resistance. "Stephanie, you don't understand. This isn't just a trip. This is our chance to secure our future. It's an opportunity to take over Holly's company. All you have to do is be away for a little while. The rest is up to me. I'll talk to Holly about your disappearance and negotiate. You just need to go to the beach and relax for a bit." But as Stephanie continued to push back, The true threat behind Kevin's words became clear. It sliced through the room's tension like a knife. If you don't cooperate, I'll handle it myself. You might not like it, but if necessary, I'll see it through to the end. I won't hesitate to eliminate Aiden. We'll keep Aiden hidden until Holly sells the company. Hearing this conversation, I felt a chill run down my spine as both fear and anger surged within me. Zach was beside me, his expression mirroring my dread. I could hardly believe the depths of Kevin's greed and cruelty. Using children, especially my grandchild, as pawns in a power struggle felt utterly unimaginable. Stephanie pleaded with her father, tears streaming down her face. Please, Dad. Don't do this. I can't believe you would use your own grandchild like this. Aiden hasn't done anything wrong. And neither has Holly. There's no reason for this to happen. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Kevin was still determined to carry out his cold, ruthless plan. I closed the app, my mind made up. I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I had to make a decision, and it felt as heavy as a lead balloon. I turned to Zach and said, "We need to take action. We can't let him hurt Aiden, and I won't force Stephanie into something so terrifying." My voice trembled, but my resolve was firm. Zach looked equally shaken, but I could see his determination shining through the shock. He nodded and replied, "I'll call the police, Mom. This is the only thing we can do right now." There was a gravity in his voice that echoed the seriousness of the situation. I felt a knot of worry in my stomach as I nodded, realizing that Stephanie and Aiden's safety depended on us. I lingered in the hallway, anxiety coursing through me as I watched Zach step out of the hospital to make that call, waiting for the police to arrive.
The air felt thick with tension between Stephanie and Kevin, a heavy silence wrapping around them like a dense fog. Stephanie was still reeling from the shock of her father threatening to use her son as a bargaining chip, unable to look him in the eye. Her hands trembled, and tears streamed down her face. Kevin, on the other hand, couldn't hide his irritation, continuously demanding a final answer from his daughter. As Kevin paced around the room, something strange caught his eye. His gaze landed on an object that didn't quite fit with the hospital decor. It was the hidden camera that Zach had set up. Confusion quickly morphed into anger as he picked up the camera and began to examine it. "What is this? A camera? What's going on, Stephanie?" he shouted, his voice filled with fury. Stephanie realized what had happened and felt a sudden wave of fear wash over her. It was clear that things were escalating. "Are you spying on me? Is this your idea, or your husband's? Or is it that woman's doing?" Kevin stepped closer to Stephanie, camera still in hand, accusing her with an intensity that made her heart race. He believed his daughter was plotting against him, feeling utterly betrayed. His anger reached a boiling point. Trembling with fear, Stephanie struggled to calm the situation, but she couldn't match Kevin's fury. "Dad, please, it's not what you think. It's just..." She tried to explain through her tears, but Kevin wouldn't listen. To him, discovering the camera was nothing less than proof that his daughter had sided with her husband's family. Betrayal, Stephanie. That's what this camera means. You've turned against me. You're with them. Kevin hurled accusations like daggers. Without asking for an explanation, he stormed out of the room. Stephanie was left in a daze, overwhelmed by despair. It was evident that the discovery of the camera had accelerated her father's plans, bringing about an even more dangerous situation for her and Aiden. Knowing that Kevin was now aware of being monitored heightened the risk of him acting impulsively. Stephanie felt more isolated than ever, powerless as she grappled with how to protect her son from her father. The discovery of the camera had not only exposed the plan but had also worsened the situation. It increased not only the scrutiny from Holly and Zach but also Kevin's threat to their family's safety.
I stood frozen in the hospital hallway, gripped by tension. I hadn't expected to confront Kevin directly right after he left Stephanie's room. When our eyes met, his gaze was a piercing mix of hatred and deep emotion, slicing through the air like a knife. It wasn't just anger, it carried an unspoken promise of revenge. Up until that moment, I had made rational, calm decisions throughout my life, but fear engulfed my heart, leaving me paralyzed. In that instant, my instinct was to flee. I grabbed my bag, turned on my heel, and hurried down the corridor. The urgency coursing through me was something I hadn't felt in years. My footsteps echoed in time with my racing heartbeat, resonating in my ears. I didn't dare look back, afraid that meeting his gaze again would somehow empower him. Fortunately, he didn't chase after me. As I widened the distance, his threatening presence began to fade. When I finally spotted Zach, I felt like a shadow of the mother he had always known. I trembled, tears of fear and anxiety streaming down my face. This was a vulnerability he had never witnessed before. He immediately wrapped his arms around me, trying to offer comfort amidst the chaos. "Mom, it's okay. I'm here. You're safe now," he whispered, but I could hear the worry lacing his voice. He knew that words alone couldn't erase my terror, yet he hoped that his presence would provide some measure of solace. The wait for the police felt agonizing, each passing minute stretching into eternity. I desperately tried to regain my composure. Each breath felt like a battle against the fear that threatened to overwhelm me.
But Kevin wasn't going to wait for the police to arrive. Driven by anger and determination, he headed for the maternity ward. His mind was set on one goal. It was to take Aiden away and force Holly to submit. The hospital had security measures in place, but they were unprepared for such a bold and sudden move. Before the security guards and staff could react, Kevin had already reached the nursery. He moved with a tense urgency, quickly spotting Aiden and scooping him into his arms as he dashed down the hallway. His actions were so swift and unexpected that everyone present was left in shock. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. Kevin reached the parking lot with Aiden still recklessly cradled in his arms and jumped into his car. He placed the baby in the passenger seat, not even bothering to buckle him in. Without a thought for his grandson's safety, Kevin sped off, leaving the parking lot at breakneck speed. The urgency of his escape was evident in his reckless driving. His focus was solely on getting away with Aiden.
I stood outside the hospital, still reeling from the shock of my encounter with Kevin. Zach was beside me, his face mirroring my disbelief. Then, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a car accelerating, along with the unmistakable cry of a baby. When I turned around, I caught sight of Kevin's car speeding past us. As the car zoomed away, I could hear Aiden's cry, a heartbreaking sound that pierced through the chaos. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, and fear froze me in place. A wave of despair washed over me, causing my legs to tremble. He took Aiden. How could he do this? What kind of monster was he? I screamed, my voice filled with panic and pain. Zach, equally terrified, grabbed my shoulder, trying to steady me, but I could see the confusion on his face. The delay of the police felt endless, turning our dread into a frantic race against time. I was consumed by hopelessness, while Zach struggled to keep calm. We both understood that every second counted in this nightmare. Kevin's plan had crossed a terrifying line. The arrival of the police brought a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Shaking and in shock, I felt a police officer approach me with a soothing voice. Meanwhile, Zach fought through the storm of emotions, striving to stay composed. He knew he had to provide every detail to help find Kevin and our son. He described Kevin's car with precision, his voice trembling with tension. The officers listened carefully, ready to act quickly. 2 tense hours passed, and Zach and I remained at the hospital, surrounded by police, receiving updates. As for Stephanie, another officer kept her informed, allowing her to wait for news with her husband and mother-in-law in a wheelchair. Finally, we received word that Kevin's car had been found in an airport parking lot.
The police had already gone to great lengths to prepare for Kevin's arrest before he could put his plan into action. Soon after, in the chaotic environment of the airport, Kevin was on the phone, his voice filled with urgency, nearly drowned out by the surrounding noise. Even the cries of the baby in his arms faded into the background. "Get the jet ready in 30 minutes." Kevin insisted, nervously glancing around him. At that moment, he spotted the police entering the airport, their presence striking fear into him. "Oh no," he muttered, hastily hanging up the phone. His heart began to race as he pushed through the crowd, desperately trying to escape. He could hear the police footsteps closing in behind him, and panic washed over him as he glanced back. They were getting closer. "Stop!" "Police," an authoritative voice commanded, but Kevin just kept running. His mind was racing with confusion. However, his desperate attempt to flee was in vain, as he was caught within minutes and ultimately arrested. Kevin still tried to protest. "You don't understand. I have rights. There's a reason for this. I need to talk to my lawyer," he gasped, but he was quickly cut off. "Save your defense for the courtroom," one officer said sternly as he cuffed Kevin. Another officer picked up the baby, bringing Kevin's resistance to an end. The commotion Kevin caused at the airport, his desperate flight, and his eventual arrest closed the tense scene, leading to an unavoidable outcome.
My heart soared with relief when Kevin was arrested, yet a nagging worry gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the concern for Aiden's safety. Thanks to the swift actions of the police, a major tragedy was averted, and Aiden found his way back into his parents' arms. That reunion, despite the emotional scars of the day, stood as a testament to the love and bond we shared as a family. Kevin received a 35-year prison sentence, along with a hefty sum in damages for the emotional, psychological, and mental anguish he caused me. For Stephanie, Zach, and me, this verdict marked the end of a tumultuous chapter. With Kevin's threat finally gone, we felt a tremendous sense of relief wash over us. We could begin to build a new life, but beneath that relief lingered a deep sadness for how far things had spiraled out of control. It was a harsh reminder of how family conflicts can escalate into something utterly destructive. Stephanie grappled with the grim reality of her father's heinous actions, facing her inner turmoil. Her greatest concern now was nurturing Aiden in a loving and safe environment, shielding him from the shadows of our past. Meanwhile, Zach carried a profound gratitude for the resolution of the incident, feeling a renewed sense of responsibility toward our family. Protecting me, Stephanie, and Aiden had remained his focus throughout this crisis, and Kevin's sentencing only solidified his determination. The substantial damages awarded to him were not merely financial reparations, but also a legal acknowledgement of the suffering I endured. Of course, no amount of money could erase the scars from those events, yet it represented an essential step in the healing process, allowing me to find closure and look toward the future with hope. Years passed since that stormy chapter, and I could hardly believe how much our family had grown. Zach, Stephanie, and I enjoyed a peace we had never known, along with a depth of love and prosperity that felt like a beautiful dream. What once seemed like rival companies, now united under Zach's leadership, formed a powerful alliance, heralding a new era of success and influence. This merger was more than a business triumph, it symbolized our family's resilience and unity. Aiden, the little miracle at the center of this change, thrived in an environment filled with love. His very existence reminded us of the values we cherished above all else. Through daily life, Aiden learned that humility, the importance of family, and true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the connections we formed with one another. In this nurturing environment, he blossomed into a healthy, intelligent, and kind-hearted child. He wasn't just prepared to face the world with knowledge and skills, but also with a big heart. Kevin's story had been a dark one, a secret that could never truly remain hidden. Yet, Zach and Stephanie approached the matter with care and compassion, ensuring that Aiden could see the past not as a shadow to fear, but as a lesson in values and morality. They believed that when the truth eventually surfaced, it would become an integral part of Aiden's growth, a gentle reminder of where he came from and what truly mattered. In this new age of prosperity and harmony, our family found the greatest joys not in riches, but in shared laughter, enjoying meals together, and cherishing the little moments of daily life. Love, having triumphed over years of trials, emerged as the most potent force, a beacon of hope lighting our path to the future. The lawsuit against Kevin served as a solemn reminder of how deep a family could sink into despair. Conflicts within a family, especially when fueled by ambition or revenge, could become overwhelmingly difficult. Yet, it also highlighted the resilience and strength of the human spirit when faced with adversity. For Stephanie, Zach, and me, the end of the trial wasn't merely the conclusion of a difficult chapter, it is the dawn of a new chapter where healing and love could finally blossom.
If this story captivated you, please click like and join our community. This is what drives us to keep sharing amazing stories almost every day. Stay tuned so you don't miss the next amazing story that comes to your screen. We really appreciate your support. Until next time.